With the release of Citadel Day More in Black Ops 6 Zombies, I thought it would be really interesting to go through and rank every single set of elemental wonder weapons in Call of Duty Zombies history. So these are all the wonder weapon sets where there are 4 of them that are kind of similar in some way, shape, or form. They don't necessarily have to be like elemental in the usual sense, but as long as there are 4 different wonder weapons on a map that have similar properties to one another, then it will count for this list. The only one I am not counting, although some people might think it should be counted, is the Cerberus from Mauer to Toten, because yes, technically there are a couple different variants of this wonder weapon you can use, but technically it's the same wonder weapon. You're just shifting it into different versions of itself. It's not really 4 different wonder weapons. And yes, we are including non-Treyarch as well. And also, to make my criteria as clear as possible, this is not just a ranking based on how good these wonder weapons are, but it is also a ranking based on how much I enjoy using them, how interesting the wonder weapons are, also how you obtain them. Like, all of these things are being taken into account within this ranking. It is not purely just how good they are, although how good they are is probably the most important part of the ranking. And this is just ranking the sets of wonder weapons here. We are not ranking each individual wonder weapon within itself. Maybe we'll do that for another video down the line where we'll sit down and rank literally every wonder weapon ever, but for this particular video, I wanted to just rank the wonder weapon sets, specifically the elemental wonder weapons. Coming in last place in the 11th spot is going to be the Final Reich Tesla variants. Now, I need to make it absolutely clear that I don't think any of these elemental sets of wonder weapons absolutely suck. I think all of them are enjoyable to an extent. They are still wonder weapons at the end of the day. But the Tesla variants, I think, are just the weakest out of all of them. One of the main issues with them is the fact that they are actually very hard to obtain, which normally I'm completely fine with that. I love having difficult quests to get things in zombies, but they have to be actually worth it. And I don't feel like most of these variants are actually worth getting. The best ones are definitely the Hurricane and the Midnight variants, and those are actually like the easiest variants to get. The other two, which are the Reaper and the Bloodthirst, are much harder to get. So I think in general, these could have used a bit of a buff to them, especially in the ammo department. They run out of ammo very fast, which is really unfortunate. But I can't help but still have a really fun time using them. The Midnight variant is the one that has a green orb that comes out of the gun and explodes the zombies on impact. The Hurricane variant has a purple orb that comes out, a bit slower, but it kills more zombies for a longer period of time, so it's a bit better for like trying to revive a teammate when you shoot the ground with it. Then you have the Reaper, which does fast explosions on the zombies, but it doesn't deal nearly as much damage as the other 2 variants. And then the Bloodthirst stuns the zombies and then kind of shortly kills them afterwards, which is definitely not as useful as the other variants, but it has its use in some senses. I just think the low amount of ammo on them is kind of what kills them. It's just not really that good to use for that long a period of a time, especially because you're going to be getting them on the later rounds anyways because of how long it actually takes to obtain them. You probably aren't going to get these wonder weapons until like the late 20s, early 30s, and at that point, they're just not going to be as useful anyways. But like I said before, I think all of these elemental wonder weapon sets are still solid, and I would say the Tesla variants are still really fun to use, and I have a great time getting them. I mean, there's a reason why the Final Reich is one of the best maps ever. It is really, really cool to actually obtain these, and I will say they are still useful despite the fact that they are definitely the weakest set of wonder weapons here on this list. In number 10 spot, I've got the Frozen Dawn melee wonder weapons. Now, a lot of people might not consider these a set of elemental wonder weapons, but I do. They are similar enough because they are all melee weapons, and obviously they're wonder weapons, so obviously I should count them on this list. Now, the issue with these wonder weapons are the fact that they are very unbalanced because there is one that is way better than the other ones, and it's the easiest one to get, and that is, of course, the Scythe. The Scythe is absolutely incredible. This thing is just insanely good at killing zombies, and it is very, very fun to use, but it is by far the easiest one to get. Now, there is the Hammer, which is actually pretty good as well. It's very, very good for the high round strategy, but it's really not as fun to use. In my opinion, it's not as satisfying to use and can sometimes be a little bit clunky to use. The shield is definitely my least favorite of all of the melee wonder weapons here, but it's really good for getting away from some of the boss zombies because it actually makes you run faster with a specific ability on the shield, and that is very, very useful during a lot of different steps in this Easter egg. And then, of course, you have the flail, which is a very unique melee weapon, so I'll give it that. You can actually teleport with it. As you throw one part of it, it'll actually let you teleport to whatever you throw it to, essentially like the teleport grenades from Advanced Warfare. So I think that element of it is really, really cool, but it's definitely not as good as something like the Scythe or the Hammer. They are probably the hardest wonder weapons to obtain on this entire list because you have to literally do the entire Easter egg to get them fully upgraded. Now, to get them just in their unupgraded sense is not nearly as bad, but once you want to actually upgrade them, it's going to take you a long time, except for the scythe. Like I said before, the scythe is very, very easy, but the other ones, they take a long time, and I think they definitely should be a little more powerful for how hard they are to get. But the fact that they are unlimited ammo wonder weapons and they don't take up a weapon slot, because they obviously take up a slot with the dedicated melee slot that World War II has, that definitely puts them above the Tesla variants, although I wouldn't put them above many other wonder weapon sets on this list. In the number 9 spot is going to be the Voyage of Despair Kraken variants. Now, these wonder weapons look absolutely incredible. Probably one of the best designed wonder weapons I've ever seen. Even just the one you pulled right out of the box in the beginning, the one that's completely unupgraded. It looks absolutely insanely cool. But one of my biggest issues with these variants is the fact that they don't feel different enough from one another. Each of the variants feels way too similar. It looks very similar. The actual effects of the attacks look very similar. The most powerful one is definitely the Ice Kraken, because it leaves behind this little snowstorm-like effect that slows down the zombies, and that's very useful, especially if you're cornered or just if you're trying to revive a teammate and then you shoot at the floor. It's definitely very useful in that sense. The electric one is also pretty good because it kind of does this thunder gun-like effect where it shoots the zombies back, and it's actually got a pretty cool effect to it. But the other variants, the fire and the poison one, are definitely not that useful. But I do think what makes these wonder weapons actually quite good is the fact that they basically have unlimited ammo, because you can just keep going back to the place where you have to craft the elemental variants, and you could just keep switching between the different variants, and every time you switch, you actually get full ammo back. Of course, this will cost you 6,000 points each time, but if you're gonna have those points, then it's basically unlimited ammo. So in general, I will say the Krakens are quite underrated, but they are definitely not the best wonder weapon sets we've ever seen. They are definitely very easy to get them though. You could definitely get them before like round 15. In number 8 spot, I've got the Die Shockwave variants from D Machine in Black Ops Cold War. Now this spot might surprise some people because technically speaking, these wonder weapons are definitely some of the best wonder weapons ever, especially because of the health cap in Cold War that makes pretty much all the wonder weapons like the most powerful things ever. That's just kind of the nature of the game. But remember, this ranking is not just based on how good they are as wonder weapons, but also how fun they are to use, how enjoyable they are, how interesting they are to get, and all of the above. And I don't really think the Die Shockwave variants are that interesting, and I think the only ones that are actually like really useful is the original variant of it, like the unupgraded version, which is really strange, and then also the Electro Bolt, which is obviously like the best version. It's just absolutely insane. It shreds through the zombies. The Nova 5 variant isn't very great. It's okay. It does a decent job at killing zombies, but I think it's a little underwhelming. The Thermoplastic variant absolutely stinks, and then the Cryo Emitter variant is also quite underwhelming. It's got a really cool effect though, and I will say these wonder weapons got much better over time because later on they actually added the ability for you to pack-a-punch them on top of being able to just do the original upgrade for them as well. When the game first came out, you actually could not do that, which was really terrible because it made them just not as good as they could be, but now they're, yeah, very powerful. I can't deny that. If I was ranking these purely on power, these would probably be towards the top of the list, mainly because of the original variant of it, as well as the Electro Bolt variant. You can actually get more ammo in them by sucking the zombies with the left trigger ability, which is definitely a pretty cool aspect of these wonder weapons. And obviously it's Cold War, so even if you do run out of ammo, you can just go up to an ammo crate and then buy more ammo. It's really not that big of a deal. They're also extremely easy to get, probably some of the easiest wonder weapons to get ever, to be honest. In the number 7 spot, I've got the Alpha Omega Ray Gun Mark II variant. Now this might come as a surprise to many people because a lot of people think these wonder weapons absolutely stink, but I'm gonna be honest, they're actually a lot better than people give them credit for, especially the Mark II-V. This is the one that has unlimited ammo and shoots out that electric pulse of lightning, and it is extremely useful because of the fact that it has unlimited ammo, obviously. In Black Ops 4, you're not having as many weapons that have unlimited ammo like you do in some of these recent Call of Duty games. Obviously, you can just pick up ammo off the ground or buy ammo from the ammo crates. Black Ops 4 did not have that though. So having a weapon with unlimited ammo is absolutely huge, and the Mark II-V does a lot of damage into the later rounds because of the fact that there is a health cap in Black Ops 4 as well. Same with Cold War. So you obviously are going to have wonder weapons that do a lot more damage for a longer period of time and don't fall off so fast into the later rounds. This thing can still be killing pretty much into the, the hundreds and beyond. It can do a great job, and because of the fact that it has unlimited ammo, it is obviously going to be able to infinitely kill zombies. The Mark II-Y is actually quite underrated as well. This is the one that shoots out the explosive orange like orbs and it completely just destroys the zombies. It does have not too much ammo though, unfortunately, so it's not as useful as the Mark II-V, but I do think the Mark II-Y is still pretty cool. It's definitely very useful. Now, the other two variants are the ones that are definitely not as useful. You have the Mark II-X, which is the blue full auto one, and it also can be dual wielded when you pack-a-punch them. And it's pretty cool to have dual wielded regular Mark IIs. That is pretty awesome, but it runs out of ammo so fast and it's pretty weak. And then of course you have the Mark II-Z, which shoots out this like purple pulse of lasers of some sort, and it is basically like a shotgun, and it's pretty fun to use, but it's just not that useful, not compared to the other two variants that we talked about before. And the quests to get these variants are pretty fun, except for the one where you have to throw a Wraith Fire into the chimney. That one is absolutely terrible because it's like really difficult to actually hit it. I think you can actually do it in a couple different ways. You can use Blast Furnace as well on a weapon, but it's like really inconsistent. Overall, just not a good quest, but the other ones are all really, really fun to do and are not too difficult as well. In number 6 spot, I've got the Zombies in Spaceland laser pistols. Now, the thing about these wonder weapons is that my love for them is almost exclusively based on how cool they are, how fun they are to use, and the quests to get them. Because in terms of usefulness, they are probably actually some of the weaker wonder weapons on this ranking. They fall off really, really fast. Now, on the early rounds, they are really incredible. When you're going in the 20s, 30s, even the 40s, they're pretty good. Once you get to like the 50s and beyond, they fall off really, really fast, unfortunately, even when you have the upgraded versions of them. Now, obviously, I'm not high rounding every single time I play this map. If I'm just doing the Easter egg, they are perfectly fine and are actually incredible. But of course, I have to take everything into account. And when taking into account how they are in the high rounds, they definitely fall off really fast, faster than most of these wonder weapons on this list. I will say, I do think they are pretty balanced though. I don't think one of the variants is like much better than the other ones. You of course have the Discord, which makes the zombies breakdance on the floor, which is absolutely hilarious. And as they're breakdancing, they're hitting other zombies. This is one of my favorite wonder weapons of all time, just because of how funny it is to use. Then there's the Shredder, which essentially just disintegrates the zombies, which is really, really cool. The Head Cutter literally pops the zombies' heads off with a lot of different colors that pop out of their heads. It's really strange, but it's really, really useful. And then the Face Melter basically shoots the zombies into the sky and has them blow up into fireworks, which, I mean, come on, how can you not love that? Now, when it comes to the quests to get these pistols, I think they're actually really, really cool. Every single one of the wonder weapons has a specific trap around the map that you have to get kills with, and then you have to get kills with a weapon that has an arcane core on it, and then utilize that arcane core in order to shoot this thing under the alligator and grab one of the crystals, and you have to do that for each of them. And there's also a couple other quests you have to do for each of them as well, and I think they're just overall really fun. They're really enjoyable to go on, and they are very rewarding because, like I said, they are very useful, especially for the Easter egg. Obviously, you need it for the Easter egg, but when it comes to taking out the aliens, they are very, very good for that. So I would say these wonder weapons definitely deserve a lot of credit. The only thing that holds them back is how they are in the high rounds. In number 5 spot, I've got the Raven the Redwoods crossbows. Now, these are very odd wonder weapons, especially because of how you actually have to get them. You have to use a sausage and then throw them at deer heads, then get kills in front of a DJ, and then get kills in front of animal statues. It's a very odd quest. It doesn't make any sense, but who really cares? They're fun to use, and they are actually very, very good. These wonder weapons are solid. Not all of them, though. You have the Acid Rain, which is probably the best one. It literally just has rain fall from the sky, like literal acid rains from the sky every time you shoot it. Then of course there is the Trap-O-Matic, which essentially lets you shoot these little orbs onto the floor that connect to each other and create these little traps that kill the zombies pretty much instantly. Like, it's actually a really useful wonder weapon, one of the most unique wonder weapons ever. Then you have the Benjamin Franklin lightning variant, which just shoots lightning out of the sky and hits some of the zombies. It's definitely the weakest one. It doesn't kill the zombies as fast as it should, and it falls off a bit quicker than the other wonder weapons in this game. And you of course also have the Whirlwind variant, which is essentially like the Thunder Gun. It just shoots the zombies back in a big gust of wind. So these variants are pretty awesome, especially because they managed to make them very unique. Like, especially the Trap-O-Matic, the fact that that was one of the variants instead of just doing, like, I don't know, let's just do an ice crossbow or something, like just utilizing other variants they've already done before. I think it was cool that they found a way to do something very, very unique. The ammo is definitely a problem with these wonder weapons though. They do run out of ammo very, very fast, except for the Trap-O-Matic. That one doesn't run out of ammo nearly as fast as the other ones, so that is definitely an issue. But other than that, they are very, very solid wonder weapons that are actually really good even into the high rounds. And coming into number 4th spot is going to be the Citadel de Mor swords. Now, these swords obviously are getting a buff soon. They've already announced the fact that they will be buffing these swords in the near future, so this definitely could change my ranking a bit. Maybe I could even put them higher on this ranking. But for now, I do think this is a good spot on the list. A lot of people have a big issue with these swords not being nearly as powerful as they should be, but to be honest, they are still better than most wonder weapons out there, and they are still really, really fun to use, and I also really love the quests to get them. So in general, they are pretty much hitting most of my criteria quite well. I do think my biggest issue is just the fact that when you're actually just swiping the zombies, the fact that you only can hit one zombie at a time, and I'm assuming that's going to be involved in their buff. They're probably going to make them so they can actually hit more than one zombie at a time, which will definitely make them a lot better. I also think the effects of swiping at the zombies should be a little bit more profound, like it should be a little bit bigger of an effect, because it's kind of hard to tell what sword you're even holding when you're swinging it fast at the zombies. When you're just holding it normally, obviously you can see what you're holding, but when you're swinging fast, sometimes you can't even tell what sword you got. The light sword, also known as the lion sword, is by far the best one because this one essentially gives you full shield every time you use the special ability, and it also heals you, so obviously that's going to be very, very useful. The raven sword is probably the second best because of its special ability as well, which creates these giant voids that completely suck in a bunch of zombies, and it can even be used to teleport yourself across the other side of the map. And then the fire sword is probably the third best. It's pretty good. It's not nearly as good as those other two though. And then the electric sword is by far the weakest because that special ability does not kill the zombies fast enough. It rarely ever kills the zombies, actually. I think these swords had potential to be the best elemental wonder weapons of all time if they had a second upgrade quest, because even after this buff, I do think it's not going to be like a major buff. I think having like a second upgrade that maybe gave it a second special ability or something would have been absolutely insane. I would have loved to have seen that, but unfortunately that's not what they decided to do. So as is, I'm going to have to put it in the number 4 spot. In number 3 spot is going to be the Ancient Evil gauntlets. So these gauntlets are so cool looking, probably some of the coolest looking water weapons we've ever seen, and the actual abilities of them look amazing as well. Ancient Evil in general is just aesthetically probably the best map of all time. The visuals are absolutely insane. The only issue with these gauntlets is the lack of ammo. That is literally the only problem. If they had more ammo, these had potential to be the best of all time, but they're really fun to use. Obviously you have the single shot attack, and then of course you also have the charge shot, which obviously the charge shot is a lot more useful for pretty much all of them. The Hand of Karen is definitely the best one because it essentially does this monkey bomb effect that attracts all the zombies to the area and then has skeletons literally come out of the blood on the ground and drag the zombies like basically down to hell. It's the coolest looking thing ever, probably the coolest looking wonder weapon effect of all time, so definitely this is the best one. The Hand of Gaia, the plant one, is definitely the weakest. It doesn't really do a lot to the zombies. The Hand of Oranos is pretty good. It just like shoots the zombies back with your hand. You have a bunch of wind that just flies out and pushes the zombies away. It's pretty cool. And then the Hand of Hemera is the light one, which is also pretty good and also has a really cool look to it as well. And I gotta say, I absolutely love the quests to get these, especially because there's a second upgrade on top of the first upgrade that you can do, and this upgrade is not required for the main Easter egg, so it's actually like a special side Easter egg on the map itself, and it's quite a lengthy quest, and it's very, very cinematic. You actually have like these trials you get to go in where you actually get to revisit the same locations that you had to go to in order to get the wonder weapon upgraded the first time, and it's really cool. And then you stick them into the pack-a-punch for that second upgrade, and the upgrade unfortunately doesn't do a lot for the wonder weapon. It just basically gives it more ammo, which isn't too crazy, but obviously the ammo being the main issue with these wonder weapons, having 10 extra shots is actually quite useful. In the number 2 spot is going to be the Origins Stabs. So I think you all knew this was coming. Obviously the top 2 is pretty set in stone. I think most people's top 2 would probably be this, but I'm putting Origins in the number 2 spot instead of number 1 spot because I don't enjoy the quests to get them as much as the number 1 spot. Don't get me wrong, I still love the quests to get the Origin Stabs, but I just don't think it's as good as the quest for the number 1 spot. And when it comes to the stabs themselves, the Ice Staff is definitely the best one when it's fully upgraded, but when it's not fully upgraded, there actually are some other stabs that are probably a bit better, which I think is an interesting dynamic between these stabs, where whichever ones are the best kind of changes depending on whether they're upgraded or not. And the usefulness of them are very different in different circumstances. Like for example, the Ice Staff is definitely the best for high rounding, but when you're just trying to protect yourself in the corner, especially in the early rounds before it's upgraded, it's probably the worst one. Like it's not good for that whatsoever. The Fire Staff, Light lightning staff and the wind staff are all definitely better when they're unupgraded, just protecting you in the corner. And when it comes to taking out panzers, I would say the lightning and fire are probably the best at that. And there's different circumstances for the zombies as well. Like I feel like taking out a large horde of them, the wind and the ice are probably best at that because of the effects that they do that kind of linger onto the zombies. And lightning staff falls off more than any of the other ones into the later rounds, but lightning staff is really great in the early rounds. So it just kind of depends. They all have a use in different ways, and I think that's really, really interesting. They also look visually incredible, and these are obviously the first ever elemental wonder weapon sets, so they are very, 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 very innovative in terms of what it did for the zombies franchise, because I think this idea of doing 4 elemental wonder weapons is one of the best things zombies ever decided to do. But the best set of elemental wonder weapons of all time in Call of Duty Zombies has to be the Der Eisendrache bows. These things are absolutely insane. In terms of usefulness, obviously they're the best of the best. They are so powerful. They will always protect you in the corner, and they are great for high rounds, especially the storm bow. The storm bow is insane. It will demolish the zombies. It will demolish the panzers with pretty much no effort needed. You can literally just sit in a corner and just kind of tap shot the bow, and it'll do just fine. Like, it'll take you to high rounds pretty good. The fire bow is also really good, although it's a little bit harder to use. I would say the void bow is pretty hard to use as well, but it's still really useful. The wolf bow is great for taking out large hordes of zombies, especially when you're training, but it's not as good if you're trying to revive a teammate or if you're cornered. And I do find that to be a very interesting dynamic as well, where all the staffs have their use in some way, shape, or form. And when it comes to the quests, I think these by far have the best quests out of any wonder weapon ever, because it's like a whole journey you have to go on to get each of them, which I think is just really, really interesting. And in terms of just how they look, yes, these are definitely visually the best wonder weapons ever, especially the fire bow. I love the way the fire bow looks. It is just absolute eye candy. So that is going to do it for this ranking. Let me know your guys' list in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out, everyone.